안녕하십니까? 네, 저는 이번
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's event held under the theme of Achieving Net Zero in Shipping. My name is Yumin Han, and I am a researcher at SFOC shipping team. The International Maritime Organization is aiming to achieve carbon neutrality in international shipping by the year 2050 and drawing up midterm measures to achieve this goal. And such regulations strongly require the shipping industry to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a sustainable shipping industry. Green shipping corridors have been highlighted as an important solution for the shipping industry to reduce carbon emissions and realize transition to low and zero carbon ships. Today's debate is joined by experts from various fields where we will explore the concept and potential of potential green shipping corridors and discuss the current status of special acts proposed, as well as implementation measures. Through this, we will create an opportunity to lead global green transition and seek ways to achieve sustainable growth in the Korean shipping industry. The discussions that place today will provide the direction of where the government and National Assembly should be headed and serve as an important cornerstone. On that note, we'll begin today's event on achieving net zero in shipping, building and supporting green shipping corridors. First, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and face the flag. Please salute to the flag.
나는 자랑스러운 태극기 앞에 자유롭고 정의로운 대한민국의 무궁한 영광을 위하여 충성을 다할 것을 굳게 다짐합니다.
Thank you. Due to time constraints, we will skip the national anthem. Please be seated.
죄송합니다. 네,
Next, I'd like to introduce our guests who have joined us today. First, we have Democratic Party Representative Moon Dae-lim, who has helped host and organize this very event. And lawmakers who have led decarbonization and pursued national interest and helped co-host this event, we have Democratic Party lawmaker Kim Won-hee, and sorry for speeding things up. And we also have People Power Party Representative Jung Hee-young, also who helped co-host this event. Thank you very much. And due to prior engagements, they were unable to make it today, but I would also like to extend my gratitude to the co-hosts, People Power Party lawmaker Cho Kyung-tae, Democratic Party lawmaker Yoon Jun-byung, and Lee Byung-jin. Thank you very much. Also, to congratulate the shipping industries gathering to discuss carbon neutrality, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries Director General Choi Sung-guk has joined us today. Due to prior engagements, he was not able to make it today, but Minister of Oceans and Fisheries Song Myung-dal has sent his congratulatory remarks in writing, so I would like to extend my thanks as well. Next, we have the CEO of Solutions for Climate, Kim Joo-jin, and please note that SFOC has organized this event. Next, we have our first presenter, Mr. Yeom Jung-hoon, who is the shipping team lead of SFOC. Our second presenter is Mr. Park Han-sun from the Korea Maritime Institute. He is a Research Ethics Committee chair. Next, I'll introduce our panelists. Our debate moderator is the Secretary General of the Korean branch of the Pacific Environment. Next, we have Deputy Director Lee Chi-kyung from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries from the Maritime Industry and Technology Division. Next, we have Center Director Mr. Kim Young-sik from the Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering from Greenfield Research. Next, we have Dr. Kim Dae-jin from Korea Development Bank from the Industry and Technology Research Center. Next, we have Professor Chung Soo-yeon from Pyeongtaek University's International Logistics Department. Last, we're joined by Senior Manager Yasu Sakurai from Wallenius Wilhelmsen Decarbonization Task Force team. Thank you.
내빈께서는
Now we will hear congratulatory remarks. So those of you that are speaking, please turn on your mics, and once you're finished, please turn it off. First, we will have our opening remarks by the lawmaker Moon Dae-lim. Hello everyone, my name is Moon Dae-lim, a member of the National Assembly representing Jeju City under Democratic Party of Korea. I'm sure that all of you in the room are recognizing the importance of green shipping corridors. The president attended the APEC conference and he pledged that Korea will step up its efforts to become one of the leading nations in building green shipping corridors. Also, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries is very much interested in this issue. Despite vested interest in this area, there is lack of legislative and policy support. And at the moment, there is insufficient resources available for green shipping corridors. Chung Hee-young, one of the lawmakers in the room, he's also very much interested in this topic. And all of the lawmakers in this room will spare no effort in pooling wisdom so that Korea becomes one of the leading nations in building green shipping corridors. And I believe that there should be a bipartisan effort to support many initiatives for green shipping corridor. I will do my utmost, and this seminar will be one of the very first. We are joined by the Director General from Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries, and I hope that we can translate our ideas into tangible projects. Also, we're joined by Kim Won-hee, who is one of the key lawmakers at the Democratic Party. He represents the Mokpo constituency. Mokpo is one of the key ports in Korea, and there have been many infrastructures being built in the area. He has spared no effort in building such infrastructure in Mokpo. So hopefully today at the seminar we can discuss many items related to green shipping corridors. Also, the special bill for green shipping corridor has been proposed by my colleagues and I will do my best so that the bill gets passed at the National Assembly. Please join me in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Next, we have People Power Party lawmaker Chung Hee-young, the representative of Gyeongbuk constituency. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chung Hee-young, and I find it very meaningful and honorable to be here today. I'm very pleased to be here with very respected lawmakers who work day and night for our people of Korea and come up with various visions. So I would like to thank Representative Moon Dae-lim as well as Representative Kim Won-hee, and I'm very delighted to be here with everyone today. In November 2022, I attended COP27, and I was part of the president's delegation. And I was able to meet John Kerry, the U.S. climate representative. And we talked about creating a green shipping corridor between Tacoma and Busan Port. And and that's one of the work that our vice minister is working on at the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. So we have put a lot of thought into this project. And the globe is getting very hot day by day, and for our future generation, we should not pass this down. This is a critical threat to all of humanity, so tackling climate crisis is one of the issues that we are very concerned about. So lawmaker Moon Dae-lim has been very invested in green shipping corridors and had special interest in how climate change impacts our lives. So I asked Representative Moon Dae-lim to be a part of this project and his efforts. So I would like to hear everyone's opinions, and our staff will be listening very closely as well. So we will make sure that relevant and necessary policies are passed at the National Assembly. And I will ensure that this will lead to tangible results by enacting relevant and necessary policies. I would also like to thank CEO Kim Joo-jin from Solutions for Climate and Director General Choi Sung-guk from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries on behalf of the Minister. And I would also like to thank Mr. Yeom Jung-hoon from SFOC and Mr. Park Han-sun from KMI for being our presenters. And I would also like to thank our moderator from Pacific Environment, as well as our panelists, Mr. Deputy Director Lee Chi-kyung, Center Director Kim Young-sik, Dr. Kim Dae-jin, and Professor Chung Soo-yeon, as well as Senior Manager Yasu Sakurai. Thank you very much.
진심 어린 말씀
Thank you very much for your remarks. Next, we will hear from Kim Won-yu, a representative of Mokpo constituency. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Won-yu, and I'm the Democratic Party's Executive Secretary for Trade, Industry, and Energy SMEs and Startups Committee. It is now time for us to prepare concrete measures for green shipping corridors. I would like to thank Moon Dae-lim for organizing today's event, and hopefully we can hear invaluable opinions from our panelists today. And the panel session will be hosted by a rep from Pacific Environment. So the reason that discussion surrounding green corridors started was because people called the need for cleaner vessels. And LNG carriers account for only 4 to 5% of total vessels in operation. Korea, Mokpo and Daewol has the HD Hyundai shipyard, and it's one of the largest shipyards in Korea. And the company produces large vessels, including those that are powered by hydrogen. While there is vested interest in large vessels, there is less interest on bunkers and other smaller types of vessels, which is a big concern. So small to medium vessels need to be also powered by batteries, powered by electricity. Although discussion today will focus on green shipping corridors, we would also need to pay close attention to carbon-free vessels. So as legislators, we will spare no effort to ensure that there is effective energy transition in the maritime sector. And we will ensure that Korea maintains its position as the world lead in shipbuilding, and all valuable insights will be very helpful for us as legislators so that we can pass relevant laws and also provide relevant policy support. Thank you very much.
응원의 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your remarks.
한국 국장님의
Next, we will have the congratulatory remarks from the Oceans and Fisheries Minister, Director General Choi Sung-yong. Hello, I am here on behalf of Vice Minister Oceans and Fisheries Song Myung-dal. Good morning, everyone. I am Song Myung-dal, Vice Minister of Oceans and Fisheries. First, I would like to thank Representative Moon Dae-lim, who has introduced the special act for supporting the establishment of green shipping corridors and hosted this event. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Representative Kim Won-hee, Yoon Jun-byung, Lee Byung-jin, and Jung Hee-yong, and Jo Kyung-tae, as well as our distinguished guests for joining us here today. I would also like to thank the organizers of today's debate, Solutions for Climate, as well as staff members and experts who are participating as today's presenters. Today's debate on achieving net zero in shipping, building, and supporting green shipping corridors is an opportunity to discuss measures to strengthen the competitiveness of Korea's shipping, shipbuilding, and port industries, and to achieve net zero, and to reflect on the global challenge of responding to the climate crisis. Decarbonizing in the shipping sector is happening faster than in any other industry, which requires a paradigm shift and proactive measures. In July last year, the International Maritime Organization, in line with the goal to achieve carbon neutrality in the international shipping sector by 2050, has adopted the 2023 greenhouse gas reduction strategy. While in April next year, the IMO's 83rd session, the Marine Environment Protection Committee, is expected to finalize a medium plan for greenhouse gas emissions. As such, it's coming up with measures such as greenhouse gas fuel standard and levying carbon tax. In addition, the EU has introduced a new regulation starting January 1st this year, requiring ships with a gross tonnage of heavier than 5,000 tons to cap their greenhouse gas emissions, which is the EU emissions trading system. To proactively respond to these international and regional environmental regulations, major shipping nations such as the UK and US have adopted public sector initiatives to decarbonize international shipping, such as the Climate Declaration and the Green Shipping Goals. In addition, global companies such as Amazon and IKEA are pursuing initiatives such as COSEV, Zemba, and Ship2Zero, which are shipper collaboration initiatives. And shipping lines, shipyards, and financial institutions have come together to form multi-sectoral collaborative initiatives, Carbon Emissions Alliance and the First Movers Alliance. As you can see, in order to decarbonize international shipping, relevant industries, governments, and public organizations have come together. In order to proactively respond to these international trends, our government is pursuing various decarbonization policies. President Yoon Suk-yeol in April attended the opening ceremony of Pier 7 of the new port in Busan and expressed his will to achieve a vision of a Korean green shipping solution, highlighting that he will make the port of Busan carbon-free and a starting point as well as a final point of a green shipping corridor. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries is preparing an implementation roadmap with the aim of piloting a green shipping corridor between Korea and U.S. Western ports by 2027. And in April next year, at the 10th Our Ocean Conference, the two countries will jointly announce an implementation roadmap. In addition to this, we're also in talks with major countries such as Denmark, Australia, Singapore to discuss expanding green shipping corridors. Moreover, the ministry, in order to develop core technologies for eco-friendly ships, is collaborating with the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy to pursue various green technology development, including a 250 billion won scale project for developing innovative technologies. Distinguished guests, decarbonizing the shipping sector and building green shipping corridors is not only limited to the international shipping sector. Coastal passenger ships, inner harbor cargo ships, and small ships and ports that sail off the coast of Korea should use green technology. And in order to facilitate shipbuilding in this manner, the ministry is carrying out a eco-friendly ship supply support project and supporting up to 30% of the cost of building green ships, such as an electric-powered ship and low-carbon fuel ships. Based on expanding green ships in Korea, building Korean green shipping corridors that take into account our coastal characteristics need to be discussed today. I hope that everyone here today will share their insight based on their expertise, and if the industries, related organizations, and National Assembly and government work together to share experience and expertise and set the right path forward, I am sure that in the near future, we will not only build green shipping corridors, but Korea's major coastal routes will also be established as Korean green shipping corridors and become a leader in the global stage. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries is committed to making South Korea's shipping industry the leader of the carbon neutral future and become a new driving force for the economic growth in Korea. Once again, I would like to thank our distinguished guests for joining us today, and I wish you all the best of health and good luck. Thank you.
국장님께서 대독해 주셨습니다.
Thank you for reading the remarks of the Vice Minister. Thank you, Director General Choi Sung-young. Next, we have the remarks from CEO of SFOC, Kim Joo-jin. Hello, lawmakers, Moon Dae-lim, Kim Won-hee, Yoon Jun-byung, Lee Byung-jin, Jung Hee-yong, and Cho Kyung-tae. I would like to thank everyone for being here at the Achieving Net Zero in Shipping seminar. Thank you for hosting and helping organize this event. With John K. Representative, you've signed the special act, and lawmaker Moon Dae-lim has proposed a bill on green shipping corridors, so it's very honorable for me to be here today, and I find it that it's a very meaningful event to have bipartisan lawmakers here today. And I would also like to thank Oceans and Fisheries Vice Minister Song Myung-dal for his congratulatory remarks, and Director General Choi Sung-young for reading his congratulatory remarks. Building and expanding green shipping corridors means creating sustainable shipping economy for future generations, and it's a journey for Korean shipping to achieve net zero. More than 50 plans on green shipping corridors have been announced globally, and Korea is planning to launch a green shipping corridor connecting Busan, Ulsan, and the northwestern U.S. ports in 2027. However, other than this particular case, there are currently no green shipping corridors operating between domestic ports or between companies. As such, Representative Moon Dae-lim and Lee Byung-jin have recently introduced a special bill to support the construction of green shipping corridors. So thank you very much once again. We are here today to discuss what kind of support is needed to build and expand green shipping corridors. I hope that green shipping corridors of Korea becomes the lead in the global standard. Thank you very much.
있으신 고려하여 먼저 기념 촬영을
Thank you very much. So to run things more efficiently, we'll first take a group photo. So could everyone please come up to the front where the podium is for a group picture?
이어서 발제를
With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to the presenters. Please note that due to time constraints, Q&A session will be part of the general Q&A after the presentations. So let's start the first presentation. We have a presentation from Mr. Yeom Jung-hoon, head of the shipping team. He will focus on recommendations for supporting the establishment and expansion of green shipping corridors. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yeom Jung-hoon, head of the shipping team at SFOC. I would like to thank all the lawmakers who are co-hosting today's seminar. In the past, I used to work as an in-house lawyer at Samsung Heavy Industries, so I understand that the critical role shipbuilding and shipping play in Korean economy and also GHG reductions. So hopefully, through today's seminar, we will be able to exchange some fruitful insights to ensure that the special bill for green shipping corridor gets passed at the National Assembly. So I'll start my presentation. My presentation is divided into 3 parts: shipping status and greenhouse gas regulations, analysis of Ministry of Ocean Fisheries net zero strategy, and recommendations for expanding green shipping corridors. I'll give you a brief introduction of SFOC. SFOC is a non-profit organization dedicated to global greenhouse gas reduction and facilitating energy transition. Through research, legal work, we strive to identify practical solutions for tackling climate crisis and create fundamental movements towards achieving Paris Agreement's target of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The shipping team at SFOC collaborates with domestic and international CSOs, businesses, governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in international shipping. So through seminars, policy advice, and report writing, we actively advocate for achieving carbon-free shipping sector. So I'll give you a brief background of international maritime industry. So GHG emissions from the from the shipping sector accounts for 3%. So as you can see from the graph, it peaks. The emissions peak at in 2008, and it continues to decrease. So among the vessels, the oil vessels, about more than 75% is accounted by oil, followed by LNG, and a very small portion by methanol. So due to time constraint, I will briefly explain to you about the next slide. So there is an international trend to decarbonize various industries, and one of them is the international maritime industry. Many international organizations and economic blocs are trying to decarbonize the shipping sector. So the IMO will be announcing the midterm measures next year. And also, as one of the lawmakers said in the remarks, the EU has introduced the emissions trading scheme, and also there has been the GHG fuel standards. Last year, America introduced the Clean Shipping Act, and I will explain other points later on. So last July, the IMO has introduced the GHG strategy for 2030, and the strategy focuses on achieving net zero by 2050. So the goal is to reduce annual emissions by at least 20% by 2030 compared to 2008 levels, with an effort to reach 30% by 2040. And it is estimated that in April next year, the midterm measures will be announced. The first goal would be a goal-based standard to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as economic mechanisms that are based on shipping greenhouse gas pricing. On the 3rd week of November this year, the House of Representatives in US introduced the Zero Emission Vessel Innovation Act. It is act that provides annual subsidies worth 1.4 trillion won or low interest loans for 10 years. The first is to provide support for R&D of zero-emission vessels or vessels that reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90%. So this will focus on well-to-wake. And the Act also provides support for charging and bunkering infrastructure. And finally, it also provides various training support for relevant stakeholders. So looking at the circumstances in Korea, there has been some measures put in place to decarbonize the shipping sector. Last year, we pledged to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and by 2050, we hope that the ships in Korea will achieve net zero, and the total number of ships currently stand at 867. Unfortunately, there's a typo in the booklet, but it's actually 867 ships in Korea that will be turned carbon-free. Moving on. This graph is from one of our reports that we released this year. It analyzes the GHG reduction scenario for Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries and IMO. So the baseline shows how much gas emissions will be released if no action is taken. So these are all for domestic ships. And if we are in line with the IMO strategy, which was released in 2018, the orange line shows how much reductions will take place for that plan. And net zero from IMO is represented by the gray line. And finally, the yellow line represents the plan for commitment from the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries to achieve net zero. Moving on to the national overseas fleet. So the numbers slightly differ from the previous slide. So we selected a total of 898 fleets. The bulk containers, PCTCs, and crude tankers are some of the top types of vessels that we analyzed. And the graph shows the annual distance traveled and estimated CO2 in tons. In terms of the carbon intensity, it is container ships, oil tankers, and tanker vessels have higher emissions relative to their operational distance. Moving on to the next slide, I compared the carbon neutrality scenario between the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries and IMO. So the IMO's net zero scenario envisions a gradual phase-out of bunker fuel while transitioning to and expanding the use of ammonia and methanol as alternative fuels. The Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries net zero scenario requires a swift discontinuation of bunker fuel and rapid shift to environmentally friendly fuels for the intermediate targets. So this will require significant initial investment, primarily focused on methanol-based vessels. Moving on to new ship investments by ship types. The transition will mainly take place amongst the carriers and container ships. So bulk carriers, tankers, and container ships will have the largest scale of new investments in ships. So there will be some significant investment going into these types of ships. So to achieve net zero for the next 10 years, we would need to ramp up efforts in investments. To achieve net zero, according to the scenario, we would need to calculate how much investment would be needed in new vessels. So if no action is taken, we would need 104 trillion won as BAU. For IMO 50% reduction scenario, it would require 114 trillion Korean won. And the currency rate, the exchange rate we used was 1,300 Korean won for $1. This slide shows you the analysis of the reduction pathways. So, according to analysis, it is very important to transition to greener fuels within 10 years. So most ships will need to be converted to ships that use green fuels within the next 10 years. We also need to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. The Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries has also announced its plans which types of ships will be transformed into greener ships, and they include bulk carriers, container ships, and tankers. To achieve such transition, we would need 85 trillion won by 2030. So financing such transition will require different types of efforts, and the most prominent solution to this would be establishing green shipping corridors. I'm sure all of you are aware of the definition, which is a maritime transport route connecting two or more ports using zero-emission vessels. And what we expect from the government is to be in line with the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees as outlined in the Paris Agreement, and to maintain the competitiveness of Korea's shipbuilding, shipping, and port industries. Earlier this year, we provided some recommendations for green shipping corridors, and we also suggested some routes between Korea, Japan, and US. The route that had released the most emissions was the one between Korea and Japan. The reason that we selected Korea, Japan, and US is because the three countries place significant importance in trade, shipping, and also the three countries maintain close ties with each other. With Japan and California in the United States, they've already announced their plans to establish green shipping corridors. So we should also join hands with the two countries to expand the green shipping routes across the world. This is the status quo of green shipping corridors. In 2021, there was a Clydebank Declaration, which was co-signed by 20 countries in the UK. After that, more than 50 green shipping corridors have been announced, although none has been actually put in place yet. In 2022, Busan, Ulsan, and Masan, and some parts in the US are trying to establish green shipping corridors, and they are currently running the feasibility tests. And in 2024, the special bill for green shipping corridors was proposed. And it is anticipated that in 2027, there will be green shipping corridor between Korea and the US. The special bill for green shipping corridor the bill was proposed in October this year. Moon Dae-lim and 14 of his colleagues proposed the bill. So this law aims to address the challenges faced in shipbuilding and expanding green shipping routes, as there are currently no operational green shipping routes between domestic ports or companies. Also, by establishing a legal framework, the law seeks to promote development of green shipping routes not only within Korea but internationally. I'd just like to give you a background as to how the special bill was proposed. So there were mainly 4 points behind the Green Shipping Corridor Bill. So using fossil fuels will make it impossible for the maritime industry to achieve net zero by 2050. That's why IMO highlighted the importance of life cycle assessment. The well-to-wake assessment is critical to slash GHG emissions in the industry. Also, the special bill for eco-friendly vessels was passed. It included LNG, CNG, and LPG, all of which are fossil fuel based. And unfortunately, these are defined as eco-friendly vessels according to the law. And the Korea-US Green Shipping Corridor will the pilot project will take place in 2027, and discussions with Australia, Singapore, and Denmark are also underway. There are four reasons as to why the special bill has greater significance. It is to encourage the private sector to build green shipping corridors, and also many stakeholders will be able to provide support not only in the shipping sector but other environment-related sectors. We could also revitalize the domestic green shipping corridors through the special bill, and the existing Eco-Friendly Vessel Act was a measure to respond to the GHG reduction strategy by IMO, but this special bill allows us to achieve carbon neutrality in time as planned by the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries. So we would need to sign MOUs first and then pass the special bill at the National Assembly. The Act will be able to provide various support in the shipping sector, and then we'll be able to expand green shipping corridors. So South Korea will be able to strengthen its competitiveness and also contribute to expanding green shipping corridors worldwide. I would like to give some recommendations. The first is to establishing PCTC between EU ports and Pyeongtaek Port. Many stakeholders today are very much interested in turning ports more eco-friendly. So Pyeongtaek Port and various ports in the EU, the CO2 emissions accounted for about 1.2 million tons, well-to-wake based. And moving on to the next recommendation, it would be great to establish the very first domestic green shipping corridor between Jeju and Mokpo. The distance between two ports is only 150 kilometers, which is very ideal to establish the green shipping corridors. Jeju has abundant renewable energy, and Mokpo has the eco-friendly fuel research center, and there are a lot of electricity-powered vessels in Mokpo, which will be very useful for the green shipping corridors. SFOC will spare no effort in providing relevant support and policy recommendations to the members of the National Assembly. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
네, 해운 탈탄소화를 위한 연료 전
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Next, we have Chairman Park Han-sun from the Korea Maritime Institute. His presentation will be on ways to cooperate for a green shipping corridor between Korea and the U.S. Hello, my name is Park Han-sun from KMI. Today I would like to present about the pre-feasibility studies on the Korean and Eastern United States green shipping corridor. Now, when I present, I emphasize this picture that you see in the front. The middle picture is an eco power plant. And then next you have a blueprint of the hydrogen vessels. And then there's an IMO convention, MARPOL, which is one of the largest conventions and the most conventions with the longest history. And IMO was so far focused on environmental issues, but now it's focused on levying taxes and accumulating funding. So now for them, environment has kind of become not a part of their big picture. So that's one of the shift focuses that we should look into. So I think this is a big trend that we should look into in terms of looking into IMO. So how should we adapt to this changing environment? And especially how should we slash greenhouse gas emissions through building green shipping corridors? So I believe today's session will be very meaningful in that regard. So for a brief overview, my presentation materials are all in English. Just to be precise, I didn't want anything to get lost in translation because a lot of the reports are based on official conventions. So please bear in mind that I just brought the original wording. And this is the background. Now, artificial intelligence is a big pillar in this picture. And then there's the 2050 net zero goal set by IMO, or Korea's net zero goal. Now, all of this intertwined. There's digitalization on one side and decarbonization on the other side. So in the maritime sector, this is leading to overall technological innovation. So energy transition and related supply chains, how we should construct this will largely depend on how Korean companies thrive in the environment. And in the very middle, which is the most important part, is humans. What should we as humans do and how should we do it? So lawmaker Moon Dae-lim, who has proposed the Green Corridor Bill, I'm sure understands that green shipping corridors is a big pillar in this aspect. And people change culture and the working environment. And that are the requirements that we are also facing in this era. Now, looking into IMO's policies, in the 13th goal for UN is climate action. How are we going to respond to climate change? So in line with that, there's the green shipping corridors. And then on top of that, we have the Clean Energy Initiative from UN. We want to use green objects, and there's the eco-friendly ships. So in that regard, there are green shipping acts, so shipbuilding related industries and the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries are currently cooperating and pursuing a big project. And then on the right side, which is the most important part, is how we should build a supply chain. Now we need necessary infrastructure in ports. This ultimately means creating a supply chain for green fuel. And this is also a critical part in green shipping corridors. So overall, industries have to do with ports as well, but this infrastructure is an important part as well. And team lead Yeom Jung-un has mentioned this as well, but in the well-to-wake overall cycle is what we should target. So we need to do a life cycle assessment, and that's what the IMO has carried out and have adopted. And like the picture that I've showed in the first slide, once there's a tax levy system adopted, a huge fund is going to be created. And how are we going to well run this fund? And how is the global community distribute this or use this for the right purposes? The guidelines will come into act in 2027. So that's the midterm measures that are currently taking place. Now there's the Climate Declaration and the Green Shipping Challenge and Getting to Zero Coalition in Europe, and there's the First Mover Coalition. It's the coalition of companies using purchasing power for clean technologies. And this coalition was to give huge incentive to these firms, and that's what the IMO is discussing. So through funding, using green fuels and supporting companies that use green fuels will be incentivized, and that's where a large portion of the fund will go into. Other than that, building capacity and R&D for eco-friendly fuel will also be the focus, and the safety of ports and the workers. Education is what is also needed. And for Europe, other than the IMO, there's a Fit for 55 goal. It's their plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55%. So they have regional regulations on the European level. It may be a burden on companies, but for the whole humanity, they may need to talk to the IMO, but climate and environment, to tackle the problems, it shows the will of the European countries. And last July, we were in the process of undergoing these studies, and our target is to achieve net zero by 2050. But prior to that, in 2040 or 2030, we need to have these midterm goals. So we're striving for 30% by 2030 and 70% reduction by 2024. And then we want to increase this number to 80% reductions. And this is a convention by the IMO, and IMO's convention is binding. It's not a matter of choice for the shipping companies, but it's legally binding. So with this goal, and since it's legally binding, we need an implementation measures, and IMO has two measures to do this. First, they have port state control, and they have port authorities that watch over shipping companies. So IMO is very enforcing and binding for these companies. So companies cannot choose to whether to participate or not. They have to do this, which is the foundation for the organization's reliability. And starting in 2021, I looked into the Environment Convention of IMO, and recently in October, I saw the draft. Next year in April, this will be adopted. This is the MARPOL amended version, and the title is Net Zero Framework. So it's all drafted. All we have to do is agree on the bracketed parts, and everything will be over and done with. Global fuel indicators, which is indicators for fuel, will be used for tax levying based on global standards. So this is one of the funding schemes that they have in mind. So let's say they levy $100, and there's also the impact assessment that I've been a part of. So if we levy $100 for a container, then about 1 trillion won would be levied in total. So that's the amount of tax that we can expect throughout a year. So over the course of 10 years, we would have about 10 trillion won, $10 trillion in total. And a good way to implement this is the green shipping corridor. And by 2050, Korea announced that we would go net zero, and we have created a roadmap accordingly. And the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries has come up with the legislation to regulate pollution in port areas. There's the emission control areas that are designated in Korea. And according to that, the speed of foreign vessels also need to curb their emissions. So this is the key of the Ministry's Act. And there's also a national action plan by 2050 of what the government will do. So that plan was drafted in 2023. And there is a strategy for promoting decarbonizing for international shipping. Last year in February, this strategy was passed in the cabinet meeting last February. And I had the opportunity to be a part of this study and take the lead. So our team was able to support the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, and this was passed in the cabinet meeting. And the vision of this plan is to make Korea the best decarbonizing country by 2050. And this was drafted in February 2023, but we already set the goal to slash emissions by 60%, 80%, and 100%, and we adopted this plan in July. And this was also what was adopted by the IMO, so we can say that Korea is setting a very global standard. And if you look at the last plan, there's the zero emission shipping routes. This is the green shipping corridors, zero emission shipping routes. So this is one of our major strategies. Now there's hydrogen that countries are using for green shipping corridors. The same goes for Japan. They're using hydrogen ports, and Singapore is also building hydrogen ports. And they're saying that hydrogen ports is one of the most ultimate goals in terms of creating green ports. And currently there are 176 IMO nations, but 171 stakeholders are engaged in green shipping corridors. And there are 44 initiatives announced and taking effect globally. And lawmaker Jung Hee-young attended last year's COP and attended a green shipping corridor side event. And I was part of that as well. And I was the moderator of that event. And the US and Korea collaborated on various levels. So you can see the Korean and American flag. We carried out a pre-feasibility study. There was a report on this, a very long report. It's over 400 pages. So we came up with tangible basis to support the new Green Shipping Corridor Act. Now, when we conduct research, we worked with Burke McKenzie, and right now we're also carrying out a pre-feasibility study, and we have at least 3 to 4 years to go. And ports also have a huge plan from step 1 to step 11, and ports and regulatory parts and bunkering are also areas where various government institutions are putting an effort into. And there is related R&D budget allocated from the government. Now, in terms of our feasibility study, there's e-ammonia, e-methanol. These fuels seem the most fit for green shipping corridors. And back then, there was no PCTC in the picture, but this year, there are some reports being worked on PCTC, so there is also feasibility studies going on. The results will be out in December. And looking into methanol fuel container ships, now shipping companies are taking different paths. There are from HMM, there are 9, and from Maersk, there's 24, and Hapag-Lloyd are retrofitting their ships, and they're setting relevant plans. And fuel infrastructure is the most important part in this development. So if shipping companies have these relevant plans, they would be able to speed up the process. But if they aren't able to put in new orders for ships, there's opting for retrofitting. There's LNG, DF, methanol, DF. These dual fuel engines are what companies are putting into their ships. Now, there's support readiness levels. There's from level 1 to level 2. You can see the overall process. The Ulsan port is the most geographically advantageous port in Korea, and Mokpo it would be ideal if we could apply this to Mokpo port as well. And Tacoma port, if you look at the right picture, is a picture of Tacoma port, and IMO proposed Norway carrying out these green shipping corridor plans. So we believe that there is a lot of groundwork done for green shipping corridors. So if we do build green shipping corridors, this is, of course, means new opportunities and a means to pursue sustainability. And these are the all economic opportunities that lay ahead. And there's ports and bunkering opportunities as well. And on the national level, it's a very good opportunity that lies ahead. So this is one of the key benefits. And last, education training is very important. How we should teach our people. And it's also called flammability, but since our fuel is gas, there are gases that have high explosion risk or are toxic, so people need to deal with this material, and we need to make sure that our workers are safe. So there is a Maritime Safety Commission that is going through the relevant hazardous parts, and we are coming up with relevant regulations. So various ships are all incorporated in this plan. In September, during the Maritime Week, we have started this International Maritime Mobility Forum, and former Secretary General Im Gi-taek was invited to this event. So Indonesia and the Philippines were some of the countries mentioned, and there's a large shortage of workers in the shipping industry. So the KMI, CRISO, and the government came together to sign a convention, and the IMO Secretary General actually attended this event and showed his interest and expressed his will to work with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries in Korea and Africa, as well as other countries as well, signed the letter of intent for building a global platform. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Park Han-sun, on your in-depth analysis on green shipping corridors in Korea.
We'll now move on to the panel session. The panel session will be moderated by Kang Hyun-ju from Pacific Environment. Please give it up for Kang Hyun-ju, please.
반갑습니다. Pacific.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kang Hyun-ju, and I'm from the Pacific Environment. It's my honor to moderate this session. I would like to give you a brief explanation about Pacific Environment. We are a non-profit headquartered in California. We lead campaigns decarbonizing international shipping and port industry, and we are also And since 2022, we have been working to decarbonize the shipping sector in Korea. We are also doing campaigns in China and Japan. Nice to meet you all. So Green Shipping Corridor is the theme of today's seminar. And at the previous COP, we discussed that there are a lot of global agenda being discussed in Korea, and Korea needs to lead such initiatives. Korea is one of the powerhouses in shipbuilding and maritime industry. And we wanted to explore options as to how Korea can lead such industries. So I believe that today's event is a very meaningful event. And we already introduced the panelists. So before we delve into the discussion, I would like to ask all the panelists a question about green shipping corridors. So we've been discussing a lot about the special bill on the green shipping corridors. We've been talking about the plants, the KDB universities like Pyeongtaek universities, and we are also joined by people from the shipping industry. So what types of support measures do you think are necessary to ensure that Green Shipping Corridor Act provides tangible benefits to stakeholders? And what kinds of policy, financial, or technological support are needed to encourage active participation and investment from the shipping industry? I'd like to hear the panelists' thoughts, please. So we'll start off with Lee Chi-kyung.
Hello, I am Deputy Director Lee Chi-kyung from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. And like the moderator mentioned, when we talk about support for the participants, we have to talk about whether it be cargo owners or fuel companies or shipping companies. So the support measures maybe differ, but on a common level, we want financial support. I think that's what people would want. And on policy measures, the port infrastructure, in terms of saving and supplying fuel and transporting fuel, we need a system in place for this. So port facility being accepted is very important. And as you mentioned, we need professionals for this. Not only just sailors, but people who fuel the ships in the ports. So we need experts for the ports as well. So I think that's a critical part. Also, we need to be able to transport this to the ships, the oil to the ships. So we need bunkering fuels for this. We need safety guidelines or manuals. Because the previous guidelines are focused on traditional fuels, so we need more guidelines for methanol or ammonia. So I think we need policy revisions on this part. For financial support, there are CAPEX, OPEX, which is a support for shipbuilding. And in terms of the shipbuilding process, there is a difference in fuel costs. So we need to financially support these measures as well. And port usage fees or tax exemptions are also supplementary tax incentives that can be considered. And in terms of technology, lawmaker Kim Won-hee mentioned this. All of the technology development that is being carried out currently is mostly focused on international ships that are on voyage. And according to the special bill on the Green Shipping Corridor, we also need to think about Korean carriers working in our coast, so we need relevant technologies developed as well. So small to mid-sized vessels or shipping lines also need to make orders and fulfill these orders. So this is also an important part. So the Ministry of Trade, as well as our government, as well as fuel companies and cargo owners, all need to come to the table for discussions. And I believe that this will make the building of green shipping corridors possible in Korea.
Well, I was listening to what Ichigyong was just saying, so I think you mostly answered your question. I'll just share my thoughts. I am actually doing a test run for electric-powered vessels, so I'm doing some pilot runs for the vessels. So I have been operating the vessel for about 40 times. We ensure that we meet the safety requirements, and up until now, we've not had any accidents or errors. But a lot of the ship owners, operators are concerned about running electric-powered vessels because it's very costly. When we use the electric-powered vessels, capex will increase by 140%. So that's a concern. And components that go into vessels need to be retrofitted to fit into the electric-powered vessels. And the question is, do we have the capabilities to maintain and fix should there be any errors? That's the biggest concern that many operators have in Korea. So we've done a lot of research and we've done test runs and feasibility tests. The stakeholders need to understand that we are doing enough work to provide safely built electric-powered vessels, and we are planning to establish a pilot shipping corridor to demonstrate our technology. And hopefully, based on such pilot zones, we'll be able to expand our efforts going on. So at the moment, we have enough technology to operate electric-powered vessels in Korea. And also, we have lithium-ion batteries, which are all based on homegrown technologies. And we hopefully can use various components and equipment that are both domestically produced that go into electric-powered vessels in Korea. So once those circumstances are met, we'll be able to effectively operate electric-powered vessels in Korea.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello, I'm Kim Dae-jin from Korea Development Bank. Now, when I got the request to participate in today's event, I put a lot of thought into it because when we say green shipping corridors, in the company's perspective, either the manufacturing division or the sales division, if they say they want to build a green shipping corridor, financially, it's very tricky because it may not be a financially friendly decision for a company's perspective. So first, for financial institutions, I'd like to explain how we look at it in the financial sector, the green shipping corridor. So first, in terms of the acts carried out by the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, I provide my advice as well. And in the financial sector, green vessels or green shipping corridors have roadmaps laid ahead, but there is no tangible number or cost laid out. We do not know how much cost is needed to build these green ships or green corridors. So for the financial institutions, a government agency or ministry, although they announce plans, they need to give us detailed numbers and the detailed cost so that financial institutions can judge whether or not it's a feasible project. But currently, I think that's a very weak point in Korea right now. And second, it's the year end. And not only KDB Bank, but a lot of financial institutions are going through the process of looking at our total assets. For instance, we have 200 to 300 trillion won up and running. We're thinking of how to allocate these funds to each sector. So whether it be green shipping or green corridors, we have to allocate a certain amount of fund and assess the growth potential. And we need relevant information to make the right decisions. But as of now, I think these are the missing points. And I tried to look up relevant numbers and material, and in 2021 to 2023, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries has put in about 7.3 trillion won in the industry, and Mr. Yum has given us numbers saying 85 trillion, but I believe that global market research institutions like Clarkson are giving us numbers with much bigger cost, because those research institutions give us more specific numbers. For instance, we need how much in S&P, how much for green ships, or how much for engine retrofitting, and for alternative fuel, we need how much. So these global research institutions give us specific numbers depending on each part. And financial institutions will look at those numbers, review it, and give you a tangible answer on how much investment we'll be able to make. But since we don't have those necessary numbers, we aren't able to make plans. So before you request financial institutions to make financial supports, I think you might a persuasive logic and specific numbers. Thank you very much.
네, 안녕하십니까. 평택.
Hi, I'm Chung Soo-hyun from Pyeongtaek University. I would like to focus my discussion point on ports. To decarbonize the maritime industry, we need to focus on bringing a big change and connecting various industries in the maritime sector, including shipbuilding and ports. Ports are the start and the end of the shipping sector. I believe that ports will play a critical role going forward, and we would need to consider various elements, including price and convenience. The vessels that are produced in Korea, when we look at how they are transported to overseas, we only fill in. The vessels have only enough fuel to go to Singapore, and then when they arrive at Singapore, they fill the ship with a lot more fuels. The reason that they refuel the vessels in Singapore is because Singapore has the cheapest fuel. And that is because the Singaporean government is providing active support in this front. I believe that Korea should follow suit, like Singapore, and that will give us more tangible benefits. So Singapore highly encourages vessels to come into their port and provides various support. Manufacturing sector and the services sector also thrives as a result of such effort. The per capita GPT in Singapore is very high, is about $80,000, whereas in Korea it's about $30,000. So going forward, we need to look at, we need to improve the circumstances in ports. Creating eco-friendly ports would be very important, and we would need government support. And also we would need to raise awareness amongst the members of the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries. So we need to look at it in depth as to how we are going to improve the circumstance. I believe that rather than financial support, we would need to provide some administrative support. For example, we need swift permitting. We need to issue swift permits to offer more options. And a lot of the vessels are going to Cape Town due to the uncertainty surrounding the Suez Canal. That is because the companies are more sensitive to uncertainties than costs. In Korea, once we have the bills for green shipping corridors, it will offer more options for the people in the maritime industry. So once we have the administrative support ready, we would then be able to provide legislative and financial support. So we would be able to, so such supports are taking place would eventually improve the ports and the maritime sector in general.
Hi, 안녕하세요. My name is Yasuyuki Sakurai. The
decarbonization task force member of Wallenius Wilhelmsen. First, I would like to express my sincere appreciation and also respect to the Republic of Korea people working in this room and also parties engaged in development of green shipping corridors as a leader really for maritime shipping in globally. And Wallenius Wilhelmsen actually has a unique presence in Korea. Our main group company, Yuko Car Carriers Inc., is known as a registered Korean company. And while the other group company, Wallenius Wilhelmsen Ocean AS, this is a Norwegian shipping company. So I'm today representing the both Korean and also foreign-based shipping companies. We, as a shipping lines, are here calling Korean ports to support our customers in Korea and the industries in Korea. The customers, cargo owners, including shipper or consignee or trader or OEMs, actually representing national interests of Korea. So we believe that regardless of a shipping line or a fuel supplier or whoever to get supported by this special the act, we believe at the end it is for our customers in Korea that cargo owners get indirect or direct support by this special act for green corridor. So I believe that this new regulations, if it passed, and will really support the customers and industries in Korea. So we are happy as a shipping lines to support this initiative. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 귀한 자리 해주셨는데 각자의 이해.
Thank you all so much for your invaluable opinions. It was great to hear different opinions from different perspectives. It's not very easy to have such distinguished panelists in one room, but the special bill will aim to cover what was discussed. So I would like to turn the floor over to Ichigyong.
다양한
You said we need the engagement of various stakeholders, not only in the private sector, but also government. We need government leadership. So the establishment of green shipping corridors, like Wallenius Wilhelmsen, our manager mentioned, we not only need the government's leadership, but also the private sector's engagement. So there needs to be policy proposals or incentives. And regarding a Korean-US green corridor, are there specific policy measures that you are planning? At the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, when building green ships and managing the overall processes, we try to come up with support measures, and we are supporting shipping companies. But since green shipping corridors have not been widely implemented domestically or internationally, we do not have examples where we specifically supported these efforts. And when we talk about corridors, of course, this is a corridor that's used by shipping companies or cargo owners upon their request. But green shipping corridors is where the government needs to be involved directly, because we need to come up with new alternative fuel and related experts, as well as there also needs to be economic support for shipping companies as well. So in this regard, on the government level, we will make sure that the private sector cargo owners and shipping companies will all participate in these efforts, and we will come up with a consultative body so that we can hear the opinions of various stakeholders in the industry. And regarding the Korea-US Green Shipping Corridor, in 2022, we promised to do this, and in 2023, we carried out a pre-feasibility study. So 2 ports from Seattle, Tacoma, and Busan, the methanol-based container vessel, and there's the Ulsan port to Seattle, Tacoma port corridor. This is for PCTCs. So these 2 routes was where we conducted pre-feasibility studies in. And for PCTC, Maersk is carrying out relevant studies. And with the Korean government and the US government, we're looking into container vessels. And for the specific support measures, they're also included in our discussions, but we haven't finalized it. But we are in the final review stages. In next April's 15th, our Ocean Conference, we will announce our final version of this. So our feasibility study includes economic factors. And the reason why we carry out these studies is to come up with an implementation roadmap. And a lot of support measures were brought up from our panelists, and who needs to do what, and what needs to be looked into is the roadmap that we're drafting. And for the course of the next 2 or 3 years, if we keep working on this, I believe that our ROC-US Green Corridor will be up and running through a pilot corridor. And specific support measures, we will share that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries announced this plan for Chorus Green Shipping Corridor targeting the year 2030, but it has been the schedule has been revised to 2027, which I think is a significant achievement. I believe that when we translate our ideas into concrete actions, that's when things become really meaningful. And at next year's OOC, we hope that more concrete measures and roadmaps will be released. You've briefly said about new types of fuels that will be used at the Chorus Green Shipping Corridor. Methanol is referred to as a clean green fuel, but unfortunately it is a very costly fuel. And this is actually a burden to the shipping companies. So the shipping companies may ask for subsidies to the ministry. Have you had any requests from them in similar vein? And do you have any plans to introduce subsidies from the ministry? For Chorus Green Shipping Corridors, we are trying to use some green fuel for the vessels. We are planning to focus on green ammonia and then move on to hydrogen. Green ammonia is a price competitive fuel, and thereby allowing us to operate more vessels. If we overcome the technological limitations, we believe that green ammonia will become mainstream. Supplying methanol is quite difficult because methanol is a very costly fuel, and there is a big concern surrounding this. Green methanol, which is used for fuel, there's no market for this type of fuel. Some are being used for test beds, but we can't say that the price for methanol for these test beds are the same as the ones in the market. But going forward, the gap between the two will decrease over the years. And hopefully, the overseas fleets will be able to request some form of support to relevant ministries, and with Korea Maritime Association, we will be able to discuss what kind of concrete measures will be needed to provide relevant support. And once we have a clearer picture, we'll be able to share them with the shipping companies. However, for the shipping companies located in coastal areas in Korea, things might be more difficult for them. And we have not had any specific requests from them thus far.
그러면
My question goes to Kim Young-sik. You talked about your ongoing projects and the pilot projects. Can you tell us more about the electric-powered vehicles that you are currently developing? So at CRISO, we are looking into technologies of the components that go into electric-powered vessels, and we are also trying to provide relevant support to operate electric-powered vessels. So we are doing some research and development in this sector. So going forward, I believe electric-powered vessels will become mainstream. At the moment, gas or fuels are those are the ones that power vessels. But as we aim to decarbonize the sector, we will try the shift. There will be a shift from fuel to electricity. For electric-powered vessels to become mainstream, we need to provide support to the SMEs. Many shipyards, when they implement new technologies, they often check if it meets the safety requirements and standards. So in Mokpo, we are building various facilities that can test the safety measures. And we have also launched a CRISO Green Ship Testbed. It's a research lab that we recently launched. So once we have the ship sent to us next year, we'll be looking into the different types of components that go in the vessel, how efficient they are, how safe they are. So we are developing technologies that can test such elements. And KGTB is a technology that looks into internal combustion engines, but also looks into electric-powered vessels. The electric-powered vessels that we are currently researching focuses on taking battery that are charged onshore, and then we will be placed inside the vessels, and we have done test run for 41 times. The vessels can operate up to 2 hours. So at the moment, we are taking small steps, and it is a very quiet vessel. There is a big difference in noise levels. In a typical vessel, you would hear a noise level that is equivalent to a subway station, but the newly created electric-powered vessels will be very quiet, almost as quiet as the noise level in the conference room. The R&D center in Mokpo, you've mentioned. I believe that it has huge potential. Mokpo is one of the favorite destinations in Korea, and it's one of the most significant ports. So when do you anticipate electric-powered vessels to be deployed on this route, and what is the estimated budget per vessel to make this a reality? First, we need to talk about technology. We need to have a reliable operator equipped with government support. So if we were to connect a passenger ship operating between Mokpo and Jeju, the technology will be expanded in a few years' time. The distance between Mokpo and Jeju is about 150 to 170 kilometers, which I think we can develop technologies to cover such distance. And I believe that budget is a very difficult thing to answer because it varies significantly depending on the size of the vessel and how efficient the vessel is. Unfortunately, the battery that goes into electric-powered vessels is very expensive, and the results would vary even further depending on the capacity of batteries. So I did set up some hypotheses to answer your question. There is let's say that we are building an 8,000-ton passenger ship. It would cost about 100 billion won to build it, and about 50% of it or 60% will simply be the cost of the battery that goes into vessels. We will encounter economic and technological challenges. We would need to increase the energy intensity to bring down the cost of the battery. Also, the lifetime of a battery is about 15 years, but we need to extend it to 30 years because typically the vessels operate for about 3 decades. Additionally, we've had some fire breaking out from EVs, which has caused a great concern nationwide. So we need to ramp up our efforts to test batteries going forward.
김대진 팀장님께서
So, Mr. Kim Dae-jin from KDB Bank requested for tangible data, so that's why we asked for the cost of vessels. So our next question goes to Mr. Kim Dae-jin. So I'd like to... Oh, sorry. As you've explained, as the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries' goal is to achieve net zero in international shipping, Mr. Yum explained about this as well. But we need to attract private finance as well. Do you think there are any measures to achieve this? Are there any specific incentives or financial structures to attract private finance? I think you, the moderator, gives a lot of the similar questions to financial institutions. I believe that you worked with the KMI and the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. And in 2018, I looked into the China, Japan, and Korea shipping industry and looked into what we should do in order to facilitate financing in the shipping sector. And I met with people working in China and Japan, as well as people working in financial institutions in Singapore. I think we need to look over the financial structure in the shipping sector. In the past, when Korea's Maritime Agency was set up, it's working a lot with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. About 80% of the funding that goes into the shipping sector was done by national banks, and a lot of financing still occurs from these government banks. Then we need to ask the question why the private sector does not step into this industry. So after carrying out these studies, I had the chance to talk with pension fund related people and people working in military related funds. And what they said is that the level of returns that they expect was 7 to 8% or 10% at maximum, but shipping investment, it's a very long-term investment, and it's very, very risky. So it's slightly different compared to other types of investments. And looking at these financial characteristics, we can't say it's an attractive financial proposal or a package. So if we want to attract private sector investment, we need to come up with a solid ground to make their investments reasonable, or else they would not be willing to take the risk. And when I was studying Japan, China, and Korea's ports, for instance, in Korea, in Busan, the Busan Bank and Busan shipping companies work together for shipping financing, and part of the costs are supported by national banks. And shipbuilding companies and shipping companies in the past developed based on government leadership, and this is a structure that's hard to change. And the problem is more serious in China. Communism is not the problem, but the communist banks or national banks in China, they take up a huge pillar in China's policies and supporting these policies. So policy financial institutions, their portion needs to be decreased. And in order to achieve this, first, we need to give the impression that this industry is a growing industry, especially in the financial market. Because from a financial institution's perspective, we want to believe that this certain sector or industry, it has growth potential. And we need specific numbers and projections for this. But for the shipping industry, there are projections that the industry is going to be sluggish compared to this year or the past year. And if these forecasts continue, then this means that the public financing institutions will increase their contributions in the shipping industry. So I believe that this is one of the problems that needs to be tackled. And second, not only public institutions, but even in the private sector, there are very few experts working on this. After the Lehman case, many experts moved away from the industry, and there was a 10-year gap where the industry was very sluggish. So many diverse kind of banks. During the past 10 years, there was a huge gap. There was a lack of experts who looked into the specific shipping industry as well as the financial industry at the same time. So we lack headcount. So after we alleviate this, that's when we can actually work with the private sector as well as the government sector. Thank you very much. I don't think that's a problem that we were able to think about. Then other than private funding, how can we attract foreign investment? I think you might give a similar answer, but other than private financing, how can we attract international investors in the shipping industry? The global shipping financial industry, I've mentioned briefly, but some of the changes that we're seeing is that China's economy is not faring well, and there are a lot of Chinese lease companies. And since China's economy is not doing well, the global shipping industry is now shifting to European investment firms. These investment firms are participating more in the shipping industry. So these Europe shipping financial industries, how can we attract them? That's what we need to think of. Now, green shipping funds or other financial products need to be developed so that we provide an attracting point for these investing companies to come into the industry. We need to provide them with some benefits and make that clear to these institutions. Not only the green shipping funds, but a lot of policy financial institutions focus on net zero or green funds or energy funds. And they allocate a certain amount of budget for these ESG activities. So relevant stakeholders or shipping companies need to express that they're very, very engaged in these ESG activities and come up with maybe reports covering their ESG reports, so that overseas institutions understand that many Korean shipping companies are invested in these environmental issues, and they come up with a consensus that we need to be involved in this issue as well. So foreign investors will then feel more comfortable to work with Korean companies. And then it would create a virtuous cycle where Korean shipping companies will also expand their investments in green sectors. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to ask a question to Professor Chang Soo-hyun from Pyeongtaek University. So what plans are currently in place for Pyeongtaek Port to become a green port by establishing green fuel bunkering? And what additional incentives do you believe are necessary? You've mentioned about legislative support. What kind of incentives do you think would be needed? And cooperation between government and industry is very important to ensure green fuel supply infrastructure is sufficiently established at port facilities. And I would like to hear your thought on this. So, first of all, I would like to share my thoughts on Pyeongtaek Port. Pyeongtaek places great emphasis on transitioning into a hydrogen-based economy, and relevant agencies are providing support to Pyeongtaek to adopt more hydrogen-friendly policies. So we have some plans to create Pyeongtaek Port Liquefied Hydrogen Import Terminal. I believe that the project includes facilities such as a berth for vessels up to 75,000 DWT and equipment for unloading and bunkering. This will allow not only facilities to store hydrogen, but also it will be supplied to other parts of the city. So the project is led by KOGAS, and the total estimated cost is around 3 trillion won. Another initiative is Green Hydrogen Import Terminal project that focuses on ammonia reception and green hydrogen production. So unlike LNG-based hydrogen production processes, which emit CO2 and is referred to as green hydrogen, this project will use ammonia to produce green hydrogen. And it is anticipated that facilities such as a berth for 60,000-ton liquefied ammonia carriers, along with storage and cracking facilities, will be built. The project is a joint effort by Samsung Engineering, Korean West Power, and Korean National Oil Corporation, and KEPCO. We would need to overcome the uncertainties surrounding permitting issues, because a lot of the operators and companies are concerned about this. Although I have been expressing my thoughts on various events, I highly would like to ask the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries to review the fast tracking of permits. Collaboration between the private sector and the public sector will create synergy effects, and the companies will be able to come up with more concrete plans to address various uncertainties regarding procurement. And we would need to have some fundamental shifts in legislative supports. Technological reception is very important, but also we would need to look into how the residents, how the locals think. Regional acceptability is a very controversial issue. So when people say there will be an energy infrastructure built in the city, the residents will be very against it. Ammonia is known as a toxic substance, which a lot of the residents are concerned about, and other chemical substances are sometimes explosives. So we need to address this issue. The operators of the port are sometimes resistant to building energy-related infrastructure, so we need to talk to the companies and also the residents' thoughts, and we would need to create a consensus between the two parties. Thank you very much. And you mentioned briefly about the offshore wind power to expand renewables at ports. I believe that residential locals accepting such change would be very necessary. It'd be nice if you could share your thoughts on what kind of support measures would be needed from the public sector in terms of policy support. So just to add on what I've said, discussion surrounding ports is somewhat limited, but for ports to be more competitive, we need to expand port-related policies to the cities, but that itself is not very easy. In the past, when we talk about ports, it was simply a place where ships anchored, and it was a pier for ports. But now, port means more than just simply piers, because it provides a great help to the local economy. So we would need to strengthen ties between the residents and the port operators. There are some discrepancies between port-related policies and city-related policies, which is hindering progress. Port-related policies need to be expanded even further. In the 21st National Assembly, there was a special bill for ports that was proposed. A lawmaker from Jinhae is preparing to propose the bill again at the 22nd National Assembly. I believe that we need to strengthen the competitiveness of ports, and we would need policy support by the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries. So I hope that the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries can play a bigger role going forward.
입장에서
Thank you. Now, to share the perspective of shipping companies, I would like to ask to our senior manager at Wallenius Wilhelmsen. You mentioned about PCTC. I know you're engaged in this. Are there any tangible participation methods to engage in the green shipping corridors? Because many governments provide subsidies for decarbonized fuel to foreign shipping companies. These companies should fulfill certain environmental obligations, like number of port entries or usage, as a condition for receiving these subsidies. So if you have any suggestions for specific obligations that should be required, please share them.
I think it's important to have a fair criteria to provide subsidies to beneficiaries of the green shipping corridors, because its main purpose is to decarbonize the shipping routes in and out of Korea, and to have a competitive advantage also on Korean ports and the maritime network from these Korean ports. So actually, when we think about that purposes, the actually nationality of ships or shipping companies or ship operators are not so important criteria. Rather, what defines green shipping corridor, or that what kind of guidelines of subsidy eligibility is more important. For example, bunkering operation of low carbon fuels in Korean ports, and also as Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries mentioned, the low carbon fuel supply is an issue. So, for example, methanol, when we study, cost of methanol is so high because also now e-methanol production is very limited. So when we think about that, maybe subsidy for for supporting local production of e-methanol, biomethanol in this country is also very important, and also for the internationally traded low carbon fuels to be supported. And also as a shipping line, low carbon fuel usage is definitely is a challenge, and then under the Korean government's pre-approval on Green Corridor, such bunkering and low carbon fuel costs subsidy could happen. It would really help us to implement green shipping corridors. We, as shipping lines, are obligated to report all the detailed figures related to emissions and fuel consumptions to IMO, DCS, and also EU MRV. So we have all the data that we can prove how many tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas is reduced, emitted, and also how many tons of low carbon fuels or conventional fuels are used as energy on board, and also how much cargo from Korea we carried. So with those data that we can prove for as a eligibility for green shipping corridor.
감사합니다. 항만에서 아까 이층현
Thank you very much. Deputy Director mentioned about infrastructure. And in order for green corridors to be facilitated, we need relevant infrastructure. And making AMP an obligation is some of the talks that are going on. As a shipping company, what do you think about AMP? There might be heavier costs that might be a burden to the companies. Do you think there are any extra support measures that can alleviate this burden?
It is a very interesting topic. And yes, AMP, additional marine power, shore power readiness, is a very challenging topic as well. And it's for both ships and ship operators, ship owners, and also for terminal operators. In terms of which one will invest first, so it's a chicken or egg situation, we call. We also operate our terminal in Pyeongtaek. We have our own Ro-Ro car terminals in Pyeongtaek. It's the same issue that whether as a ship operator, whether we invest huge money for AMP or our ships to be invested with shore power ready. So that's the challenge. But we are studying this also in the Green Shipping Corridor study from Ulsan, Masan, and other Korean ports to the Tacoma, US, and also actively studying with port authorities if such future investment is happening at both sides. We have our vessels, the Shaper class vessel we call, this is new building vessels with methanol dual fuel engine, has already standard shore power, AMP ready. So those vessels we ordered, 14 vessels, will be shore power ready. So when ports in Korea are ready, we are very happy to take electricity from shore side, so we can fully decarbonize the port operations and also port callings in Korea. So, yeah, and however, that we have over 100 existing vessels are not ready for shore power. So we need to invest to be shore power ready for retrofit. That's also huge investments. So that is why we need regulations to encourage such investments as an industry. So as Dr. Park of KMI just mentioned that IMO is implementing midterm measure by 2027 for fuel usage on board. So that's such a green kind of balance mechanism to put tax levy on the fuel oil and then supporting with subsidy for low carbon fuels in the future. Such kind of a balancing mechanism probably needed also for shore power AMP investment for terminal operators and ship operators, ship owners to invest on both sides. That such kind of a mechanism is needed because as a ship owners and also terminal operator, are we going to just do nothing to pay a penalty, or are we going to positively invest for decarbonization? So, thank you very much.
감사합니다. 저희가
Thank you very much. I think we ran a little late because of our debate. Now we were going to get some questions on the floor, but I think we will skip that. So, to our panelists who participated today, thank you very much once again. It was a very insightful session. And last to wrap up, Representative Moon Dae-lim will share his final remarks. Thank you for your wonderful remarks. It's a new opportunity and it's a new pillar for sustainability. And as I've mentioned earlier, there are a lot of political tasks left at hand, and we need to work closely with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. But than that, I think your opinion is more important. So I will make sure to reach out to you individually so that we can pool our insights. And during the national audit session, I asked the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries about this issue, and they were aware of this problem. We talked about a lot of numbers in terms of subsidies and support. Some said 7.7 trillion, some said 85 trillion. So there's a big gap in numbers. So the Ministry of Oceans and Affairs and SFOC, as well as experts, need to gather again, even if it's a small-scale debate like this, so that we can close the gap between our opinions and come up with tangible results and achievable action plan. So I ask for your full support, and I will make sure to pass this act. Thank you very much.
토론을 진행하여 주신
I would like to thank Kang Hyun-ju, the moderator of the panel session, and all the panelists for their insightful opinions. I would also like to thank Moon Dae-lim for organizing today's seminar. So this brings us to the end of our seminar on achieving net zero in shipping, building and supporting green shipping corridors. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to all the members that have helped us out organize today's seminar. Hopefully what was discussed today will pave the way to increase the competitiveness of green shipping corridors. Thank you very much.